in the spirit of the infinite now, I wanted to share with the two of you that I've been reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been doing a number on my mind, I think. Multiple different parts of my mind, obviously. But what I was hoping to do today with you guys was to read an excerpt that I've found particularly powerful, one that I've gone back to 5 or 6 times now, just trying to really absorb the message. And I was, as I was reading it last time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to hear TJ and Temple talk about. This is what I want to get into conversation about. So I will go ahead and share this excerpt with you guys, and then we can kind of see what comes up for us. How's that sound?
Beautiful.
Okay. When you don't play roles, it means there is no self or ego in what you do. There is no secondary agenda, protection, or strengthening of yourself. As a result, your actions have far greater power. You are totally focused on the situation. You become one with it. You don't try to be anybody in particular. You are most powerful, most effective when you are completely yourself. But don't try to be yourself. That's another role. It's called natural, spontaneous me. As soon as you are trying to be this or that, you are playing a role. Just be yourself is good advice, but it can also be misleading. The mind will come in and say, let's see, how can I be myself? Then the mind will develop some kind of strategy. How to be myself, another role. How can I be myself is, in fact, the wrong question. It implies you have to do something in order to be yourself. But how doesn't apply here because you are yourself already. Just stop adding unnecessary baggage to who you already are. But I don't know who I am. I don't know what it means to be myself. If you can be absolutely comfortable with not knowing who you are, then what's left is who you are. The being behind the human, a field of pure potentiality rather than something that is already defined. So for me, when I had to reread that over and over because I was witnessing my mind in all these different areas of my professional and personal life, I assume I need to be a certain way. And TJ and I were talking last week about how sometimes I'll reflect on big presentations or podcasts or conversations, and I felt like, wow, that was such a good one. And when I thought about what made it feel that way, it wasn't scripted. It was off the cuff. It was natural. I wasn't trying to be anything. And I'm just now starting to understand what that means on a deeper level. And I was curious what that brings up for either of you.
Well, I can either Temple, go ahead. I mean, it's so rich.
Well, to me, you just define being a mystic, being a mystic, not doing a mystic, you just define that, for myself. And because we're constantly going back to a familiar paradigm. And so the beauty of the richness of allowing, this is the day the Lord hath made. This is the day the law is working. I allow it to work through me. May I allow that space to come through me. And to me, it's the excitement of discovering something about myself that I don't know yet. And so it's not even so much of hanging on to what I identify in my mind about how I used to be, but the allowance of seeing something new. And Bear's like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. You're singing on the stage today? What? When you're not even the singer? Okay. Well, that's a new thing about you that's unfolding. And it's that level of being brave, isn't it? Of just being. And I think that you catch it, Jeremy, when you said the word assume, because we predecide, we make these assumptions. that this is how they remember me the last time we met for lunch, and let me see if I can fit into that character again. It's not trying to be fake. I think it's on one level wanting people to feel that sense of familiarity. But we're in this this emerging world. I don't even like to say changing world, emerging world. It's very exciting. And finally, just about that, because TJ shares the love that I do about shamanism, is that's why in shamanism, there's a lot of imagery that's used rather than language, there's one culture in Native American tribes, they don't even have the word why. It's not a word. Not a word. So imagery draws out who we are becoming in certain ways as we meditate on it and pray upon it. Go to town, TJ. Back to you.
This is a fun little spiritual tennis match, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
And before, actually, what's interesting for anyone that's watching at this moment, we don't pre-plan even necessarily what we're going to talk about. And interestingly enough, Jeremy had chosen that reading, but didn't share it with us. And what was up for me, or what was emerging for me, is this idea of spontaneity and the spontaneity of spirit and the trust that comes with that. Because when I was sharing with Jeremy and Temple, when I first started doing ministry, I was playing a role as a minister, right? And it's only because I hadn't yet, I think, developed the awareness of my own potential. Now, it was always there, like the potential's always there. But because I didn't really yet feel, and confident is an ego construct word, but it still is a word that works, right? Confident in the trust that what emerges in this moment as spirit, and that's what Temple's pointing to. As a mystic, we recognize that we are already all of that. And then we shift into how do we share that with the world? So we're not moving, we're not law of attractioning, we're law of radiating, right? Let me radiate this spirit. And when I first started speaking at spiritual centers, I had everything scripted. And as it evolved, I realized that what was on the page was written on Thursday evening, and now it was Sunday morning. And what was on the page wasn't relevant to this moment. So there was a deeper level of trust and awareness, and it's twofold. One, there's only now. So I was literally up on the stage speaking from a past level of awareness, even though it's 3 days, totally different moment. And then the other thing is I began to lean in and trust the energy of what wanted to emerge in the room. So yes, it was coming from within me, but I was co-creating with however many people were in the room. And I can't tell you how many times something would emerge and my mind would be watching and saying, why am I talking about that? And then someone would come up afterward, breaking down in tears, saying, you have no idea what you just shared is exactly what I've been working through. So when we're open, when I'm truly living in spontaneity, there are things that emerge that my mind isn't even aware of. And the last thing I'll say is one day I woke up, Temple, I think you're going to relate to this, but I woke up one day and I shot out of bed and I thought, now I know what I meant. Something that I had said when I was speaking. And I may have shared that the last time, but it's like my mind caught up with it.
That's so true. It's so true. Well, I believe that's, one of the reasons that the two of you're creating such a successful program here, because it's in the flow. I was thinking today how it was only 1 o'clock that I reflected on my calendar. I went, oh, I'm doing a Zoom thing today, and yet I can remember years ago, that would be like the thing. And the thing itself had energy around the thing. And do you have my landline? And, what are we going to talk about? And, oh yeah. And just remember to promote, this languaging around things. And it's like, oh, I wonder what we're going to talk about today. And not as the controller, as the receiver. And I think that's a key point, Jeremy, and at least how I identify with so many people living in the illusion of control. Well, I just, 3 weeks from now, this is happening. I need to know now where I'm going to be about that. And that's a directional map, which is beautiful. But we're also saying that just like when you're on a traveling adventure, also allow room for a side road that you haven't seen yet. And there is something very invigorating and energetic about not feeling that, well, we're not in control anyway. We just create a structure. And part of that would be promoted. What's coming to me would be corporate America.
Yeah.
You know, Sue left her job. She wasn't happy with it and she left. So we're replacing that with someone else. Could be in church work. We're replacing that with someone else. And here's the resume that we hired her 11 years ago. This is the one we're using to hire you. And it would always be funny to me, and it still is, if somebody comes and they're newly, you know, coming on board with us, and any of them can say that I'm absolutely, you know, speaking the truth. And they'll say, well, do you have a job description? I go, no. Or one came in one time and said, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to replace Reverend so-and-so. You know, I've heard so many things about him. I can't wait to replace him. And, you know, tell me what he did. I said, I'm not telling you. And they're like, what? And I went, no, I'm not going to tell you what he did, because if he enjoyed it, more than likely he would still be here. I'm more interested in what you have to bring. So in the common world of the illusion of control, it can make people a little crazy. Mm-hmm. But I think it's hysterical and actually have a lot of fun with it. You know, and mm-hmm. Everybody's eyes looks at you. Well, don't you think we ought to come up with a job description? Yeah, definitely do. But I feel like you need to be the driver of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. One of the what I'm taking from what both of you have said is the sense of control versus the sense of spontaneity. And for me, one big realization that I'm living in now is the fact that when I think, I think that I can think my way through anything. When something uncomfortable comes up, like I'm in a transition right now in my life, professionally and personally, and I'll find myself on my morning runs just like, okay, I'm going to think about this, and I'm going to think and think and think until I figure it out, and then once I figure it out, I'll be at peace. Right? Yes. And so what I've noticed the last couple of weeks, really, that I've noticed is that I can think all that time. I spend all that time thinking, and I'm still exactly where I am. And the shift hasn't happened yet. But when I just say, okay, well, today is today, and right now is right now, all of a sudden these things kind of start happening. And so I'm wondering if we could maybe look at that a little bit, and the role that thoughts and thinking play in that mechanic or that mechanism of control that we hold on to.
It's so interesting for me, because when I hear you speaking, I'm thinking about the power of presence and the energizing power of presence. And to me, you know, it ends up these spiritual concepts, which once used to be so complex to me, become profoundly simple. When I'm in my mind only, and I'll talk about the role of the mind in my life or my take on it, but when I'm in my mind only, I find myself exhausted. When I'm trying to control something that's not controllable, I feel exhausted. When I'm looking at the world as something to be figured out or even conquered, right? That's the archetype of the ego. I'm going to conquer. I'm going to win. I'm going to, you know. When I'm in that, I feel exhausted. When I'm truly present, very, very aware of what's happening in this moment, what happens is I do start to have that mystical experience. And all that I mean by that is there's information from source energy that's a deeper truth that brings to light so many different ideas, right? So it's like great ideas emerge in the stillness. If my mind is so busy trying to figure out, I miss this opportunity. And Jeremy and I had an opportunity to really sit in the silence a few days ago and start to vision for our company, which is Conscious Recovery. It's far more than a company, but that's, you know, the ego framework of it. We started receiving messages that were so much more powerful. And when I received the messages from vision, the key for me is to pause and be with that for a while, because my mind is like, oh, good. Now that I have the message, let's go into the action steps. Boom, 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 boom. And those are important. But for me, and this is just for me, I don't know for anyone else, but for me, I have to sit in that for a while and be curious. And as Temple said, not in the why of it, but in the, let me be open to this. Let me reflect on what this might really mean. And then the action starts to emerge as an organic process. It's like the mind is really powerful. And as we awaken, and awakening can happen in an instant, I have the instantaneous awakening. Oh, I remember who I am. Then the mind can become the vehicle for delivering spirit. But I spent most of my life with doing it the other way around, trying to figure out how to, be a vehicle for spirit. It didn't work so well for me, except for it did, because I was so exhausted, I finally surrendered.
Mm. What do you think, Temple?
Well, I was just reflecting upon, she's been showing up a lot in my life. My shaman teacher, she's been dead. This June actually will be 3 years. But on her deathbed, it was interesting. She was called Queen Bee, and her first letter of her name, Berenice, was a B. And she used to say Miss B. And in all of that, it's very interesting that on her deathbed, she said, I'm leaving, and I finally figured it out. Really, all I needed to do while I was here on this earth was just to be.
Yeah.
Was just to be. I was on a interview yesterday with a new formed organization, Centers for Spiritual Living, and they were saying, you have so many areas that you're contributing to the world. I'm saying that not to impress you, but just to impress upon you the conversation. And you're contributing to this, contributing to that. And how do you sustain? And I said, well, first and foremost, I don't really think about it. I don't stop and think about, well, how am I doing all this, being all this? I don't think about it. But I think for me, a key is not compartmentalizing. I'm being in the Jeremy that I know, and I'm being in the Jeremy I don't know. I'm being in the temple that I know. I'm being in the temple that I'm looking forward to seeing and knowing more about. And the other piece for me that she was so strong about is that she would say, you acknowledge something, and then you accept it, and then you allow it. And I really irritated her, because I said, for me, in the being of that, in a meditative place of that doesn't work for me. Maybe because I've been doing a 12 and 13th step the majority of my life. But I don't want to be so quick to accept something before I allow it. You understand what I mean? Because if I accept it, it might just be because it's comfortable, because that's what I knew someone else did before, or something I did before. So I acknowledge something in my life, and then allow, and kind of sit with that, and make that adjustment around that, and be with it. And then I accept it. I'll give you a funny example. That I was crossing the road one day, and someone was going real fast, and I was walking my dogs. And I shout out, it's 20 miles an hour, slow down, traffic controller here. And so it's like, slow down. And the person yells out, of their window, oh, shut up. You old grandma, you're just an old grandma. And I was like, well, what is it that makes me look like a grandma? Is it the hat? Is it? But in that allowing, I just laughed all the way walking the dogs. I went, well, I am a grandma. Yeah, he nailed it. But anyway, it's allowing the new. I find this to be fascinating. With you're hitting it on the level of, we're talking about spiritual law conversation, but what gets in the way of the innate spontaneity of spiritual law is the human law, restraints. It's like two new people will be in a relationship, And the first 6 months, they only talk about, you know, how they love staring at each other and talking endlessly on the phone or whatever, Zooming. But then after that, they then tell each other about the relationships they used to have and the hot buttons. So they can spend all these years in their lives looking to either see that hot button or avoid it. Mm-hmm. And I've always said lasting relationships are about relationships that you don't do all that past dumping on another person. You know, you say, I have no idea what this is going to look like.
I love that, Temple, because well, two things. One, I really love that you talked about allowance and acceptance. One of the things about writing books is as soon as it's written, 3 months later or 15 minutes later, I might say it differently. And so there are some things that are in my first two books, and I'm like, oh, I don't even say it that way anymore. And two of them are accepting and letting go. So I started to shift accepting into allowance. And then with allowance comes curiosity.
Yes.
Right. Because when I'm a field of presence, I'm curious. Now, I would love to say in my life that there was a finish line, that I got to the place where I no longer had any kind of ego attachments, but that's not at all my experience. The difference, though, is I move into allowance and curiosity more quickly. And that's the greatest gift. It's not about eradicating the ego or eradicating my points of view or my opinions. It's simply recognizing that they're not the truth of who I am. So if I go into acceptance, it could be from ego, like, oh, I have a judgment of you, but I'm just going to accept you. Right. There's this flavor of judgment within that. Or, I'm just going to accept that this is how I am. And there's that energy, right? I'm going to accept this. When I move into allowance, there's something about, let me allow this to move through and as me, and just let me be curious. And when I'm curious, I'm open to different possibilities. When I'm in some kind of judgment, and my judgments have gotten somewhat more subtle, but they're still there. And so I get to notice those and witness those from this essential beingness. And I think that's why I love Eckhart Tolle's work, because he's talking about becoming the observer, witnessing, noticing. And I genuinely thought that people in meditation were saying the goal is to quiet the mind or get rid of the mind. And I thought, Temple, in New Thought, I thought people were saying the only thing we have to do is change our thinking and our life will change. Yes, at some level, but there's this deeper awareness that it's really about becoming the observer from this place of wholeness. And that's when everything really started to shift in my life.
Well, yeah, and that's part of, what we see with the evolution, or in some cases, the lack of evolution in New Thought, is people had picked up a few quotes and literally just, run them to the ground. And change your thinking and your life will change. That's a part of it. And often we see students that start being aware that they do have a mind and they're using it and they're kind of co-creating their world. They kind of grow like that. They go, whoo. But then it's like often there's a plateau, because that's only one level, one piece of it. Heal your emotional body. Also, your life will change your energy. Yeah. And, work with spiritual law, not just human law. It's not either or. But and it's very interesting, because a lot of the same people teaching change your thinking, change your life will also quote Ernest Holmes and say, oh, you want to be open at the top. Well, where are we open? And exactly where is the top? So it's, for me, as I often say, I think the key for any of us is just making sure whoever we're quoting, whatever book we're using, whatever we're expressing, is that it is congruent with our own lives, that our soul feels like, yes, this is congruent. This is in alignment with, at this current time, what I'm living, what I'm speaking, how I'm experiencing the moment of being. And that's, to me, the crucial part, because I'm like all of you. I don't want to just live a life that I'm everyone else's, what they said. I'm about what I have taken with what they've said and integrated, then to create the own harmony and the own music within my own soul. That's important, you know. And we have so many people from First Unity today that's on my watch party, and people joining us, and we're getting all kind of comments. So I would urge you to go back and look at those. It's exciting to see so many of them tuning in. I just wanted to give them a shout out.
Yeah, thank you guys.
On, you know.
Yeah. So I have this burning question, and I don't know what part of me wants to ask this question, because Temple, if I can be honest, this book has me all kinds of turned around, it seems, at times.
Good. That's good.
And I'm
turned
really
around is good.
Yeah, and I'm really enjoying it.
How do you think I felt the first time I met with my future shaman teacher? And she said, you know, and what do you do? And I said, well, I'm noted as being a strong spiritual leader. And she went, ha, 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 ha. Half the things you're talking about have nothing to do with slap spirituality at all. Oh, you people who claim to be spiritual, slap, you know, and here I am, you know, 25 years later going, oh, you people that claim to be so spiritual, slap. And you're going to complain about the toilet paper, slap. Like, you know, but that's how I felt. Anytime a new earth, as pun intended, you know, it's shaking you up, and it's beautiful that you're getting that, and it's beautiful that we all get that. And on the collective, we're all getting that right now. Yeah, and it's the most exciting time I've ever lived. Yeah. And in that, we are so not in control.
Yeah. And on that, I think what keeps coming up for me is, you know, TJ and I did a visioning of last week, just sitting in the ultimate vision for our lives, for conscious recovery. And when I went into meditation, it was unlike any other meditation I'd ever done, because I recognized that all the static, all the noise wasn't me. Yeah. And that was really the first time that I genuinely witnessed that was happening, because I was part of a recovery group that's primarily Buddhist based, and I would go to meditations all the time and, you know, watch your thoughts and let them fade and watch them pass. And I say, okay, yeah, you know, but I'm thinking the whole time. And I thought that I was thinking. And so when we went into this visioning process, and I recognized that there was thinking, but it wasn't me doing the thinking, and I saw it, it was a very, a very unique experience. And so I'm wondering if you guys have any, if that resonates with you, of how to, or maybe not how, but looking at strengthening the observer, you know, how, because what I find myself going to is I want to go back to that. I'm clinging to that. I'm really, and I recognize that that's happening, and I'm trying to figure out how I can foster a deeper relationship with the observer.
For me, I first of all, I love it. Love it. And I have been and continue to be at many, many moments where you're at in the curiosity of that. I want to go back to one thing Temple said before I answer that, because I absolutely adore what you said. Of course, Temple. Authentic spirituality actually authentic spirituality is actually here to shake us awake, not to lull us to sleep, right? Not to make everyone feel better. You know, those of us who take a ministerial oath, we recognize that we're here to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable, right? So when there's disorientation, I'm always really, really excited about that, whether it's in my life or someone else's, because we're literally reorienting ourselves to a new way of being. And the ego, as we know, likes to have things in a box and stay the same, right? I am my past. I am my past story. I am my personality. Nothing inherently wrong with that, but that's a container that keeps the essential truth of who we are small, right? There's something that feels safe about that. So when we either have a peak experience where we feel the truth, this greater reality, that starts to like get shaken up. So anytime someone says, I've been doing this meditation, I've been reading this book, I've been part of this group, and I feel so out of sorts, it's always the congratulations. For me, I really love what you said about that peak experience. Now, you didn't use that word, but for me, it's like when I touch reality, my ego comes in and says, ooh, I want this more. I want more of this. Mm-hmm. And I love what Pema Chodron says about meditation. And this is what shifted me. Some version of, and I'm paraphrasing her, but we all love those meditations where we tap in and feel the oneness and joy and, oh, I understand the true nature of reality. And then the next 5 are irritating, frustrating. Why am I not feeling that again? But her point is they're both perfect meditations because we get to witness all aspects of ourselves. And I really, really think that is important. It's really important to recognize. Another thing I'll say, this is something that emerged for me over the weekend, ironically. I have these experiences where I touch reality, where I know only oneness. And then I might spend the rest of my life trying to figure out what just happened. Right. But you said something, Jeremy, that's so powerful. There's a difference between knowledge in the mind and the experience. That's why I love the word experience. I experienced oneness. Yes, my mind wants to figure that out. I might spend the next 10 years trying to figure out what just happened. But can I be curious about that experience rather than curious about the experience?
Yeah, there was an image that came up that I have to think about the story for a second. It was about a teacher that gave to all her students a white sheet of paper. And in the center of the white sheet of paper, it had a black dot. And so she asked all the students, what do you see? And every person responded to what was wrong with the black dot. It was the wrong size. Was it really a square? It wasn't really big enough relative to the page. How did it get there? Was it even a black dot, or had something, been left on there? Nobody really spoke about the white on the page, all of the white on the page. And to me, if I were wanting to describe my life, if you asked me to describe how do you want your life to be and what I understand right now and being comfortable with what I don't know, I would say that my life is that entire white on that page of what I'm looking forward to seeing in that next time or this next moment, how that's going to fill itself in. And the black dot would be the governance of my heart. It's really about the heart. Healing is in the heart. Energy is in the heart. Openness, being open in a heart. And I'm talking about the sacred heartedness. Yeah. So if I've got to measure my spirituality by wondering or not if I'm being spiritual enough, I'm not in my spirituality. And so the thing I think is so important in this observing oneself is, am I gentle with myself? And am I mindful that I'm not projecting yet a new way of doing the old thing, but calling it something much more sophisticated? Because ultimately, I'm okay. I am exceptional. I am unique in the creation of spirit. So if I'm observing myself and why are you doing it? And you're doing that. And you weren't really being right then. I mean, you could have really been more present and be more being there. If that's the space, then I'm doing the same kind of things I did pre-recovery. I'm just calling them something different because I'm still feeling like I'm not enough. I'm still apologizing for myself, or et cetera, et cetera. Are you feeling that? And I'm excited to say that. I don't know if it's for our watch party folks. We have people even tuning in from Norway, my beloved Elizabeth. So, it's this groundedness that there is a space within me, that sacred heart, black dot that can never be abused, never be cheated, never be worn out, never be weary. That's that sacred part. That's that piece that with a list and activity and schedule and calendar, if there's a missing cat, how can I serve? How can I serve today, Great Spirit? And for me, that is my mantra inside. How may I serve?
Yeah, that actually, you just kind of blew my mind, Temple, because one of the things that I've recognized.
You heard that, right, TJ? Right.
Yep. But one of the things that I've seen in myself is that I am very thirsty for more understanding of things. So, for example, when I met TJ and I read Conscious Recovery, it was like, oh my God, what other books do you have? Because
yes.
I
he
like
does that to people. Yes.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. But I like the search. I like the journey of it. Right. And, but one of the things that I also know to be true is that sometimes I'll use it to spiritually bypass to where, and I feel like what you just described is exactly how I spiritually bypass, where I'll say like, oh, that's just my ego mind. Like, I'll pay it no attention, but I just bypass the entire experience. And so I'm doing the same things I was in my past, but I'm disguising it with something I've learned now. And that is really, really profound, especially like for me as someone in recovery, where I do watch how I repeat behaviors and things like that from my past, but under or through a different lens almost.
One of the things I love about what Temple said is when I came into New Thought, I realized that in some ways, some of the concepts that we hear ourselves repeating, even in New Thought, are just dressed up with some new language, right? So maybe we grew up with the idea of a God that's up there and out there and somehow keeping score and then punishing us, right? So some of us grew up with that. I did not grow up with that, but it was in the energy field for sure. I remember thinking there was some big, a man with the beard in the sky keeping score, and I knew I didn't measure up. And when I think about a 6-year-old thinking that, that's really sad to me, that I thought that if someone was keeping score, I was on the short end of things. But sometimes in New Thought, we just dress it up with different language, because I hear people saying, well, if we don't practice our principles enough, we're going to get the cosmic 2x4. Right now, look at the image of that. That's like we're being slapped. And I love the way Temple said slap. She's not saying this because I know what she's saying. But like somehow the universe is going to like wake us up with this cosmic 2x4. The interesting thing is I have experienced the cosmic 2x4 in some ways, but it's not because I wasn't doing it good enough, right? That was my mind. I need to get good. And going back to the theme, when I first came into New Thought, I still felt really broken. And I hadn't yet done some of the awareness of that part of me that still felt broken. So I jumped onto looking really good and using affirmations and doing the vision board. And all of that was really fun because I did start to manifest. And I was like, I got everything on my vision board. And then it was like, why don't I feel different? Why did this not make me as happy as I expected to? And so then there was this shift where it was like, oh, this isn't really about that outer search. That stuff's all fun. There's nothing inherently right or wrong about all of that playing in that manifesting stage. There's something deeper too, where it's like, let me really tend to all parts of me, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And then there's a really different way of being in the world. And the greatest paradox, and Temple said it so powerfully, when I get to that deepest place, the question is, how do I serve? And Jeremy, when you and I were doing the visioning for conscious recovery, that's what came up. How are we here to serve in consciousness on planet Earth, where there is on one level of reality, people suffering so deeply from addiction? How can we serve that? How can we be part of a new paradigm? Very different than how do we fix it, or how do we become successful, or how do we get the word out? That's very, very different way of being.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. This is rich today. You guys always deliver.
It's easy with you, Temple. It's fun.
That's right. I'm curious. I'm going to just pull up the Facebook really quick and see if there are any questions. Temple, can you see if there's anybody asking questions
on her end, on her Facebook?
Lots of good claps and hugs.
And we love hugs.
Identifying different things, and the word alignment is come up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Someone on mine, and maybe this is something we can speak to. She says it as a statement, but it could also be a question. She said, it's hard to let things happen organically. So I'm curious about that.
I would say my answer to that, and it sounds like a school teacher responding very quickly with the ruler, but my answer to that would be to not let things be organic, lose the possibility to be insightful, and lose the possibility to be created in the present moment. It's our human mind, human law wants us to automatically say, this is going to be hard. I mean, I'm sitting here going into September. It's 33 years of sobriety. And I don't remember a day that it was hard, because it was organic. And it was exactly, well, I wouldn't be talking to you if I hadn't stopped participating, that's for sure. But it was organic and it was natural. And it's not going to be, my feeling is it's not going to be organic and hard in talking about the same experience. Yeah. Pushing an experience makes it hard. Forcing an experience implies struggle. Wishing something into being and pretending it's a divine sign, and when it's nowhere near close to what you were thinking, and you're like, well, I'm just gonna go with it. Those kind of things, to me, and my own experience, and that's all I can speak to, have been the harder ones. Wanting to reach more people, so then going to be an international motivational speaker. Wanting to be home more, so then staying home spiritual. It's like it's those kind of things, are like, both of you were saying, wanting to take conscious recovery and knowing that there are a lot of people that have addiction in the world. But then the organic part is there's a gazillion people like us.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sitting here in this Zoom shop. Mm-hmm. There's a zillion people like us that are just need a little bit of insight, or to see a different window, or hear a different awareness, like what the two of you are producing all the time, that they have that wake up. Mm-hmm. And when people talk about giving up on somebody that is an alcoholic, I go, whoa, wait a minute, you're talking about me.
Yeah.
You're talking about me. I'm so grateful that somebody, someday, one moment, didn't give up on me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I love what showed up for me as you're speaking, Temple, is that what someone saw in me, and I often go back to my first spiritual teacher. And when I say spiritual teacher, it was really a spiritual being that was living this embodied, organic, mystical life. And it was so profoundly attractive to me. But the key, not only did she not give up on me, but she saw through the illusion and saw me as a whole and perfect being, which is how that has become the foundational principle of conscious recovery, that underneath all addictive behavior is a whole and perfect spiritual being, because clinicians, support groups are all like, what's broken and how do I help fix you? And Mary Helen, with her beautiful Southern accent, all she would do is look at me and I could feel the love. And with her beautiful Southern accent, darling, you're so precious. And in the beginning, I would literally resist, right? Because I didn't at that moment know that I had the capability of experiencing that. Because at some point in my life, I had separated from that and built a wall. And then I, had all these different addictions. That was all just a search to feel whole again. Mm-hmm. all the addictions, all the relationships, all the like relationship after relationship after relationship with these unavailable guys. And it was only because that's what I felt that I was worthy of. They were perfect and wonderful, but I kept trying to plug into people that couldn't give me what I thought I wanted. But it was because the journey was knowing my own preciousness, just like every single person on the planet holds within that preciousness. I remember a friend of mine, and she's very public about her trauma, but her father died when she was young. He drowned, and she was 8 years old. And her mother at that moment started drinking addictively and then ultimately committed suicide. So she had so much trauma. And the first time she went to therapy, first time she was willing to really share all this, at the end of what she shared, the therapist leaned over, touched her knee and said, "Oh, I am so sorry that happened." And she said, "That's the last thing I needed. I needed someone to say, let's walk through this. There's a part of you that's still whole." And she's a fan of Eckhart Tolle, ironically or not ironically, but she realized the power of the observer when we're working with people and being with people, not to lean into the, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened," but to look at like her innate ability to heal. Because she said, what I needed someone to say is, "Wow, that's a lot. How are you with that?" And then look for that part of her that has the ability to heal. And I think that is a profoundly different way of being with ourselves and with others.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One of our listeners has just given us a subject to do next time, if you two are willing.
Always.
How do you heal your inner child?
How do you heal?
How do you heal your inner child? That would be a good flavor to bring in some shamanic practices and some other things, you know, related to that conversation.
It's a great idea.
Talking about walking down memory lane for a moment. I was having a memory of, like, I don't know, has it been 20 years? A long time ago. There was going to be a group of people in New Orleans, and there was going to be a very small group, and Oprah was going to be there. And so I decided I was going, and there wasn't even Super Soul Sunday then. There was the Oprah Winfrey show. And I'm like, I'm going to meet her. And I paid, I think we paid several thousand on the collective for all of us to be there. And it was this small group, and I was so ready, and I had my outfit to match the colors of the theme, and woo, I was ready, and it was going to happen. And I was on fire, and I had my activism book, and I'm like, I'm gay, and I'm recovering alcoholic, and I'm this and I'm that, and you just need to know me because I'm like a Broadway play in one person. I just got to see you. So anyway, we go through all this, and my mom calls me that morning real early, and she says, "Are you having a good time?" And I'm like, yeah. And we're going over to the Love Dome there in Ambassador Dome there later. And she goes, "Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but Oprah Winfrey just announced on national television, this is the first event in her life she's ever canceled from not feeling well."
Wow.
And I got it. That is not organic. That is
so powerful.
Pushing the road of my life and pushing the human law that says, well, if that happens to you, that makes you somebody. Yeah. And in that space, it's the knowing that that is not really what it's all about. It's not what it's.
Wow.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh. I relate to that. So many levels. I mean, I remember, and Temple, you'll appreciate this, and with our common friend, Michael Beckwith, I remember always wanting to meet him. And now I partner with him on many different things. And it's just, oh yeah, there was an organic nature of it that came through envisioning. And he actually reached out to me to ask for collaboration. And in other times I would have been pushing, I want to work with Marianne Williamson. I want to work with Temple Hayes. I want to work with Michael Beckwith. And then it's like, as I released all of that, now look at what happens. And it's, not from a place of, oh, isn't this wonderful? Now all this is happening, but it's really about the power of trusting the vision and allowing something organically to happen, because I like to go into curiosity, going back to the question of it's difficult to allow things to happen organically. Sometimes I think it's so simple. I struggle when I try to control. It's painful. Pain is a beautiful thing, right? There's a difference between pain and suffering, but if I put my hand on a hot stove, ouch, there's a reason I need to take my hand out of the hot stove. And so when I control and I push up against, I'm exhausted, I'm depleted, it doesn't go my way. I mean, even if it goes my way 99% of the time, I'll still focus on the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
if you ever doubt that, I didn't talk on top of you. I thought you had completed, but if you ever doubt that, go back to your high school reunion and look at the person you just thought if you didn't have them, you were just going to die. And you're just so happy it didn't work out. You're like, oh my God. The essence of you always has the grandness of your life.
There's an interesting story that I won't share on here. And I'm not keeping secrets.
Hey, Jeremy, make a note of that.
It's a story about my high school sweetheart and my comparing myself to him. Yeah. And that I've done years of, wow, he's doing all of this, this, and this, and I'm just this, this, and this. Isn't the ego amazing? It's here to serve us. And it's useful. I love the Dr. Sue Morter, and I repeat this often, but only ego would want ego to die. It's not about the death of the ego for me. It's about recognizing that it's useful, but it's not the ultimate truth. And holding that loosely. Isn't it interesting that I have this personality? I go back to Mary Helen, my first spiritual teacher. She would no more do this show or get up on a stage. She spoke once in her life and she said she almost had a heart attack. That was not her gift. Her gift was sitting one-on-one with someone in a room and holding this powerful space. And she said to me one time, you know, your personality is such, you're very extroverted, you're very outgoing, and you're very driven. That is going to be useful for you. And she said something and it shot right through me. And this is 30 years ago now. She said, you will use your gifts to deliver this message to a larger audience. And I'm grateful for you for that. Mm-hmm. And I had spent so many years thinking I'm too loud, too extroverted, too much for people. And that I'm sure has been true in some circles. But I also recognize that when I'm using it as a vehicle, it's profoundly useful. So it's not about getting rid of that. If I got rid of my ego or my personality, I wouldn't be on this call. So it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with it. It's just recognizing that when it's in charge, it's painful. That's why I can surrender into organic is actually easier. It's not more difficult, but it's one of those, you know, a paradox, if you will, that, and Temple, I think I've heard you say this, it's really difficult until it's not. Mm-hmm. Right? It's really difficult until suddenly it's like, oh, it's not difficult.
Mm-hmm.
No, they've been saying for years the only thing that makes life complicated is that people believe that it needs to be, you know, I mean, it's not a new saying. We certainly didn't make it up, right. But in our community, it's if the easy button isn't on it, let's put it over to the side. There are people requesting to know when our next call is.
We will.
That's special. Do you have a sense of when that will be?
Well, I say the sooner the better, because I love the topic of healing the inner child. It's a big part of the conversation in conscious recovery. Mm-hmm. And I love, Temple, that you're going to bring some shamanic practice. So I guess we can look at our calendars, get it scheduled, and then let everyone know on the feed from the interview, from this talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think next week, if we can, would be great.
Well, let's take Memorial Day off and honor it.
Okay.
I can do the 8th. I can do June 8th.
This is a first. I think this is brilliant that we're scheduling the next call live on the air. I just absolutely love that.
That's
Yeah, let's be in love with that. Let's be
in love with that. I could do June 1st, and I can do other days of the week.
Okay. I can do June 8th.
June 8th is my 34-year recovery birthday.
Wow.
Is that a good day to do it, or you want to do?
Absolutely. I can't imagine anything I would love more than to celebrate on June 8th with the two of you.
All right. And it's June 8th.
You want to do the same time?
Whatever works for you, Temple. I'm game.
2 o'clock, 2:30?
Yeah. 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, yeah.
So 11 a.m. on the West Coast, everyone, June 8th.
Awesome. Yeah, it's on the books.
What an honor.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for this beautiful conversation. And everybody watching, I can't see who's watching, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching I don't know that I would love to know. And I'm just really in a lot of gratitude right now for the words that we got to share with each other and that we got to do this, Temple. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I love it. I just love being with you and just connecting. And I feel like I prayed the two of you in because I love the richness of just open conversation.
Yeah,
me too.
Me too.
Not a plan, not a agenda, but just, okay, we're going to start out here. And that's what I love, because I've been on many interviews with people through the years, and you'll, just like you started out with Eckhart Tolle on the New Earth, and then it emerges into something else, and all of a sudden we're talking about black dots, you know, and the interviewer will keep trying to bring us back. Well, remember that one statement, and it's like, oh, please, we're not allowing. It's the consciousness of ourselves together and what how we impact each other with the flow, but it also is about the people listening.
Yep.
You know, I mean, to me, there's absolutely no difference. And maybe in some ways it's better to read through people's energies online or on Zoom than it is when you're in public settings, because then it's body language and do you really, that quote, did you mean, you know what I mean? So it's really, really, it's very rich, and I love how you do it. I love your style, Jeremy, and you're just so calming, and, you know, you really help me and TJ, you know, we're in being shy and all. I'm committed to not using statements that aren't true. So everyone, please forgive me in advance. Absolutely.
And having said that, Temple, we're also, Jeremy and I already talked about, as soon as they let us, you know, have more physical contact, we want to come to Florida and visit you, because, you know, I've never been to the Gulf Coast of Florida. I've only been on that other side, you know, and
oh my gosh, we got to have you my guest. Done.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Can't wait.
Let's do that. Let's absolutely aim that. And maybe that's when the book will be out in November, because it'd be a better time to come. It's a little cooler then. And that's when the book will launch, about beating alcoholism. So.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll be there.
Okay. Well, we're going to pull that one together, and we can do a couple of things over at First Unity too.
Sure.
Perfect. You'll love it here. The most amazing people I've ever met in my life. Hanging here.
I can't wait. And to everybody listening, tune in. For the first time ever, we booked our next speaking event on the current speaking event. So we'll be here June 8th, same time, and we'll go live on Facebook, and everybody can join us then. And I can't wait. This topic in particular, I'm really excited to see where it goes. And yeah, let's all just take care, and hopefully we talk between now and then, and we'll see everybody on June 8th.
Love you all. Thank you.
Much love.
Thanks, everybody.
All of you, and all you sacred warriors and amazing human beings that joined us today.
Thank you.
Bless you, bless you, bless you. We are so grateful.
Bless you, Temple. Thank you so much.